let me show you this. Like, someone just replied this to my tweet talking about the only people that are doing any good on these issues are John Fetterman, AOC, and the squad. The rest of the Democratic Party is fucking useless. This is John Fetterman.
I'm actually proud to say that I do have several litmus tests. First of which, do you support the repeal of Citizens United? I believe money in politics is a cancer. Citizens United needs to be repealed. 2, to protect a woman's right to choose. That right was enshrined by the Supreme Court, but is now under siege in many states across this country, particularly states like Texas. That would be another thing that I would absolutely insist upon. 3, do you believe in the general consensus, the scientific consensus of climate change? We can't have somebody on the Supreme Court that just trusts their gut because it snowed last week that we don't have an issue with climate. 4, do you support the equal rights for the LGBT and transgendered community? We have to enumerate their rights and include those in the basic civil right legislation. And finally, a union's right to organize. And those are my 5 litmus tests, if you will, for anyone that I would vote for Supreme Court.
He's fucking based!
Today, after 50 years, our abortion rights have been taken away from this nation. Let's just keep this short. Compare me to Oz. Oz celebrates these rights going down. Send me to Washington, D.C., I would be a senator that would be that 51st vote to codify these rights into law. There's also other rights.
Yeah, he lost a bunch of weight between now and then.
Like marriage equality.
That was 2016,
the
chat.
stakes couldn't be higher. Send me to Washington, D.C. to step up to our basic democratic values. Thank you.
Now, John is a strong opponent of the filibuster. And so not only is he good on all those issues, he's not a dumbass. Abortion rights greater than the filibuster. That's the tweet. We can't wait. We need Democrats to vote like Democrats, scrap the filibuster, and pass the Women's Health Protection Act. There's a reason why he's winning. Because not only is he a big boy, he's a big boy that wants to do shit. All right, let's watch AOC talking about it. This was AOC. She went on the Sunday side shows. Papa Mooch, thank you for the prime in the 9 months.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York, Congresswoman, welcome back to Meet the Press. Look, before I get to my first
weekend, and it was so good to hear stuff like the local socialists getting a big cheer when calling for collective action and more than just voting harder. A little bit of hope in a horrible
Nice, Ifea. Thanks for the 14 months.
Question. I want to get your reaction to the governor of Arkansas, especially specifically to this issue of that he is comfortable with the government essentially forcing a woman to carry out a pregnancy.
Well, you know, I think naturally I couldn't disagree more with Governor Hutchinson, but I think what's really important is honing in on this idea that the governor and the Republican Party and, frankly, the Republican legislature in Arkansas cares about the life of a woman and the life of a mother. The state of Arkansas and Governor Hutchinson governs over a state that has the 3rd highest maternal mortality in the United States. 71% of the women who die are black women as well. This is a state that has 26% child poverty, where 1 in 4 children are living in in poverty in the state of Arkansas, and forcing women to carry pregnancies against their will kill them. It will kill them, especially in the state of Arkansas, where there is very little to no support for life after birth in terms of health care, in terms of child care, and in terms of combating poverty. This decision and this policy will kill people, no matter what their spin and what their talking points are. And that's what the data shows, and that's what the statistics show.
Congresswoman, I know most of what may change things is going to have to be done at a ballot box. But what would you like to see the Biden administration do between now and November?
I think what we need to do is show the American people that when they give the Democratic Party power and when they actually do vote for us, that we will be using and we are willing to use the power that they do give us in order to merit increased expansions in our majority. So in terms of what I think the presidential administration...
Can you imagine Joe Biden exercising power like 1% as strongly as Mitch McConnell? Can you imagine?
Administration should be able to do. We have many ideas. We have some ideas coming from Senator Warren, signed a letter along with 25 other Democratic senators asking President Biden to explore opening healthcare clinics on federal lands in red states in order to help people access the health care and abortion services that they need. We also must, and President Biden did indicate that he was going to start looking into expanding abortion access via the pill, as well as educational efforts henceforth, but also what I believe that the president and the Democratic Party needs to come to terms with is that this is not just a crisis of Roe, this is a crisis of our democracy. The Supreme Court has dramatically overreached its authority. We had two conservative senators in the United States Senate, Senator Manchin and Senator Collins, come out with a very explosive allegation that several Supreme Court justices misled them during their confirmation hearings and in the lead up to their confirmation. This is a crisis of legitimacy. We have a Supreme Court justice whose wife participated in January 6th and who used his seat to vote against providing documents that potentially led to evidence of such to investigators in Congress. This is a crisis of legitimacy, and President Biden must address that.
It's interesting you say that. I want to put up the Joe Manchin quote in particular on his reaction, because he used the word, he said, they testified under oath. He made sure that was in his release. It sounds like you believe, okay,
thank you.
He might as well be saying they lied to him.
Okay, so if that's true, what are you going to do about it? Oh, well, people can just lie to me and do whatever they want and I'm going to eat shit? That's what he's going to say? What a fucking cuck loser!
He feels like they lied to him and they lied under oath. You think the House Judiciary Committee should begin the process of an investigation there?
In 1937, President Roosevelt...
Sorry about that.
If we allow Supreme Court nominees to lie under oath and secure lifetime appointments to the highest court of the land and then issue without basis, if you read these opinions, issue without basis rulings that deeply undermine the human and civil rights of the majority of Americans, we must see that through. There must be consequences for such a deeply destabilizing action and hostile takeover of our democratic institutions. To allow that to stand is to allow it to happen. And what makes it particularly dangerous is that it sends a blaring signal to all future nominees that they can now lie to duly elected members of the United States Senate in order to secure Supreme Court confirmations and seats on the Supreme Court. This is what we're saying.
Do you think lying in a confirmation hearing is an impeachable offense?
I believe so.
Okay.
I believe so. I believe lying under oath is an impeachable offense. I believe that violating federal law in not disclosing income from political organizations, as Clarence Thomas did years ago, is also potentially an impeachable offense. I believe that that not recusing from cases that one clearly has family members involved in with very deep violations of conflict of interest are also impeachable offenses. And I believe that this is something that should be very seriously considered, including by senators like Joe Manchin and Susan Collins.
I want to ask you a slightly bigger picture question here. Jason Lincolns wrote this in the New Republic, and it seemed to ring true with a lot of folks. Under the headline, The Democrats' Theory of Change, Wait for the Republicans to Screw Up. For the GOP, change comes after long periods of hard work, steady funding, and maintaining enthusiasm and momentum through periods of setback. For Democrats, change is reactive, coming only after the GOP's ambitions have hurt just enough people to make Republican rule untenable. What do you make of that?
Here's another example of that. Here, before we get to AOC's answer, let me show you this. This is InnuendoStudios, who makes a great videos on YouTube. I wish he put out more. But Shouldn't they impeach all 3 judges? You think the Democrats are going to do something incredible, brain? Chat, they never will. I mean, the current people in charge, right? If AOC was in charge, if John Fetterman was in charge, they would be doing shit. If Bernie Sanders was in charge, but with Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi? Are you kidding me? There is no coherent liberal agenda. We can't enact policy the way Republicans do because that's authoritarianism. But we need to uphold the policies passed by authoritarians because that's democracy. And we have to vote for Democrats, but we can't expect them to do anything. So we have to vote for blue dogs to get a majority. But the blue dogs, which is a conservative Democrats, are why our majority can't accomplish anything. And we need to hold the White House for Supreme Court appointments. But if Republicans have a Senate majority, they won't let us appoint judges. And we have to respect the rulings made by courts Republicans packed with stolen seats. And you can protest, but only in ways that don't put pressure on politicians whose job is to negotiate with Republicans, whom we admit are authoritarians. But we can make incremental progress, but only if we hold all 3 branches of government with supermajorities in both houses for at least 30 years, which is technically possible, but has never happened in American history. Cool. This is the point where they say, oh, so you'd rather blank? And you spend the rest of the conversation explaining your own position so they don't have to clarify theirs.
Well, I think that it does speak to
Blackmaster, thanks for the 2 months, man.
generational change within the Democratic Party. You know, I believe that there are, you know, there is an establishment within the Democratic Party that has a nostalgia for a better time of politics from decades ago. You hear this very often when you hear certain Democrats say that they wished for a strong Republican Party. But the fact of the matter is that we have a new and very different Republican Party that more people are recognizing, but frankly, the roots of which have already been there, which is a lack of respect for American institutions, a lack of respect for the law, and a deep desire to debase very, very critical underpinnings of our democracy. And so I do believe that there has been a weak democratic strategy in the past, and we cannot continue to use those same playbooks. Right now, as I say, is that this is overtime for our democracy, and we must be aggressive.
Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat from New York, appreciate you coming on and sharing your perspective with us. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you very much.
When we come back, the legal.
Oh my God, dude. We are completely fucked. We're completely fucked.
For as long as I've been able to vote, Democrats have used the Supreme Court card to lecture progressives about the need to support them. Voters have been told for decades that every election could come down to a woman's right to choose. This gun to the heads of the left demands we conform and comply for the sake of protecting these sacred rights, telling them, if you don't like the Democratic Party nominee, too bad. You're not really voting for the next president. You're voting for the Supreme Court. Look, we need to stop thinking of the Democrats as helpless kittens that are just outsmarted in battle time and again. They simply don't care about us. They didn't fight for us because they don't want to fight for us. Remember when Obama had a supermajority in the House and Senate the first 2 years in office and only managed to get us Romney care? Then he let the GOP block his moderate Supreme Court pick Merrick Garland because it was too divisive during an election. This gave Trump 3 vacancies to ram judges through.
I mean, Ruth Bader Ginsburg not retiring. That's 1. You have the Merrick Garland. That's 2. Just those 2 judges. You flip those over to the Democrats. Now it's 5-4. Now it's 5-4 liberal judges. Certainly wouldn't cause a socialist utopia to form, but partisan gerrymandering, illegal. Government wants to regulate EPA? Yes. Children have the right to a public education? Yes. Voter suppression laws, unconstitutional. And on and on and on it would have gone. But guess what? They stole the seats. He had a supermajority for 2 years, as that's accurate. He didn't have it for 2 years, but he had it for months. And then who gives a shit? If you have 59 judges, reconciliation bills, you get 2 per year. What did they do with it? Nothing.
Interestingly, in the past 50 years, the Democrats have actually only been able to get 4 justices appointed, compared to the Republicans' 15, despite the pendulum swinging back and forth on which party holds the White House.
mean anything
but
to
let's
me.
take a step back for a moment. Even if they were to expand the court, balancing it out with liberals, or even if the whole court was entirely picked by Democrats, what would that really mean? First of all, the Supreme Court is bound to the Constitution, deciphering what the Founding Fathers intended when writing it, or rather, what the slave-owning aristocracy...
I mean, that's not true at all. I mean, that's just originalism. You don't have to do that. You can interpret... There's all sorts of alternative ways to interpret the Constitution. You don't have to go, the Founding Fathers thought that it meant this. You could adopt a plain reading of the text with contemporary social and community standards. You don't have to fucking read some originalist bullshit. You don't have to do that.
Aristocracy nearly 300 years ago wanted. The U.S. Constitution was created as an instrument to protect the ruling class, their private property, and their wealth. First, the slaveocracy, it's since been modified to fit the needs of the capitalist class. For example, as soon as the U.S. Constitution was amended to abolish slavery, it was also amended to state that corporations should be considered people, but with more rights. From then until now, most cases the Supreme Court deals with are for
Stevie,
corporations.
thank you for the 14 months.
Secondly, the main purpose of the Supreme Court is to overturn anything passed by Congress deemed unconstitutional under this capitalist constitution, meaning the Supreme Court is explicitly undemocratic. In other words, if the Democrats...
I mean, again, all these are just Supreme Court decisions. They're not in the Constitution. Like, it doesn't say in the Constitution that judicial review actually exists. It doesn't say, like, all this shit. The Constitution doesn't even say capitalism. So I don't know. I mean, yes, it's a liberal constitution written early in capitalism's development, and yes, the Supreme Court has acted in this way. But it's getting my semantic Andy. You know, you could have radical judges doing all sorts of shit. You know, look at the way the legal system is operating in Bolivia now.
Democratically elected Congress passes anything democratically that the ruling class does not like, our SCOTUS lords can simply swoop in and scrap the whole thing. It really is the last line of defense for the super rich against progressive change. To block the gains of mass movements, even if they win that holy grail of push.
But the Constitution gives Congress the right to strip out jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, to change it, to change its authority, to change the number of judges, to do all sorts of things. So, I mean, if we're getting owned by the Supreme Court, it's because Congress is letting itself be owned.
Pushing Congress or the White House left. Imagine what would happen if we won Medicare for all. While the demand to expand the court would be a progressive reform, it would still be stuck in this horrible framework and system of legal inequality. The entire Supreme Court really needs to be abolished, and we shouldn't be afraid to say it. And while we're at it, we need a new constitution too. This court is considered the great moral arbiter when they've often been on the wrong side of history. For example, codifying Jim Crow segregation and the internment of Japanese Americans in concentration camps. And who could forget when they...
The reason why there was only 20 Senate working days is because when Al Franken was declared the winner, they went on vacation. So the idea, like, they only had 20 working days is because the Democrats went on vacation after Al Franken won. That's another dodge. That's another thing where you're not supposed to know about the legislative calendar. You're not supposed to know how the Democrats sat on their fat fucking asses and did nothing with a super majority. Oh, we only had 20 working days. We went on vacation for all those working days, but hey, if you know, I mean, like, give me a fucking break.
Handpicked our president, George W. Bush, after he lost the election. Today, all the hand-wringing about why we must turn to the Democrats to maybe appoint a better justice is based on the fact that a small number of times throughout our history, the Supreme Court has made landmark progressive rulings. They point mainly to decisions overturning segregation as well as upholding the right to abortion and same-sex marriage as proof that everything hinges on who is put in the court by way of who we elect to the White House. But a deeper look at those watershed cases tells a different story. In each one of those instances, it was not good-natured justices doing the right thing. Each of them were the result of mass movements in the streets, on the shoulders of decades of militant grassroots organizing that made this system fear making any other decision. In fact, Roe v. Wade happened in the first place under the reactionary Nixon administration and a right-wing Supreme Court. So a woman's movement today can
Nixon actually appointed, I want to say, 4 judges. It was a lot.
defend it under the same circumstances. Millions are terrified about what this new court dynamic will mean, and it's a legitimate fear. Instead of letting them corral you into an unjust political system that makes you feel the only power you have is to vote, history shows us the power of the people can tip the scales. We need to look at our own potential, our own capacity to organize and defend our rights.
We are here in Missouri outside of Planned Parenthood, and I'm sure you heard the news today that Roe v. Wade was overturned. And that means that in Missouri right now, it is illegal to provide an abortion, even in the case of rape and incest. It'll be a Class B felony, punishable with up to 15 years in prison. So we at The Good Liars, we have a very special message for the Supreme Court.
Go fuck yourselves.
We are here in Missouri.
You were right on Nixon appointing 4. Yeah, thanks for checking on me. I want the Republicans to win another 2-year terms of presidency. That dialectics come into play. I mean, I don't. That's a very mechanistic way of looking at reality, which is not how it works. Reaction can win. Remember that. And by the way, chat, something that's very interesting is there's another case that Clarence Thomas didn't cite, which I found really interesting. And it's something we've talked about before called Loving v. Virginia. It's a case in 1967 which struck down all the laws against interracial marriage. The right to marry a person of a different race was addressed in Loving v. Virginia, in which the court said in 1967 that its decision striking down anti-miscegenation laws could be justified either by substantive due process or by the Equal Protection Clause. So right there, why would Clarence Thomas not mention a case about interracial marriage? Why would Clarence Thomas not mention a case that is based on the same logic, but for interracial marriage? Why is that okay, but not for women to control their own bodies? I think Clarence Thomas may be the president of the leopard-eating People's Faces Party. Oh, he's going to take away gay marriage. He's going to take away abortion rights. He's going to take away your right to get contraceptives. But suddenly substantive due process makes sense for his own marriage? Hypocrisy is his middle fucking name. But of course, I mean, at this point, is anyone surprised? Are you watching the stream unsubbed? You're making income inequality worse. You are doing anti-praxis. We are the only Twitch stream that will not accept scam advertisers, and I will never fuck you over by selling you crap